Pyrenees produced an epic stage yesterday and set us up for a great race to Paris. We look at the implications for the main contenders of the Stage 11 shakeout at the top. Today, Carcassonne provides the perfect backdrop for the French national celebration. All the host country needs now is a Bastille Day winner. If it harnessed the output of the peloton, France could probably mothball a couple of nuclear power stations. We talk wattage today, and 10 years on from his final tour, we hear from Big Mig on this year's contenders. Hello, happy Bastille Day, as I believe the greetings cards say nowadays. The tour marks July the 14th with a return to French tarmac here in the spectacular medieval setting of Carcassonne for stage 12. Floyd Landis of the USA has a yellow jersey to show for yesterday's day trip to Spain. Better than a donkey or a sombrero, I suppose. Although at this stage of the race, the lead was really a byproduct of a massive day in the Pyrenees rather than a specific objective in itself. So, apart from a new race leader, one with every chance of still wearing the yellow jersey in Paris in 9 days' time, what have we learned from the first big mountain stage of this year's tour? Well, before we discuss, let's recap. There were 5 major climbs on stage 11. Somebody exited stage left on pretty much each of them. Bain's big hope, Ivan Mayer, went all together. In fact, it seemed the only thing that stopped him abandoning before the climbing had even started was the presence of the television motorbike. For the last 7 years, Discovery had been the team setting the pace on the first big mountain stage to see off Lance Armstrong's rivals. But the Col du Tourmalet saw them starting to crack. 4 of them were clearly struggling on the first big climb, including Paolo Savoldelli. T-Mobile had strength in depth over the first 3 climbs of the day, and their tempo put the yellow jersey of Cyril Dessel in trouble. By the slopes of the Col du Portillon, which took the race into Spain, though, they were down to their 2 top riders, Michael Rogers and Andreas Klöden. De Wittemon's Cadel Evans, the former T-Mobile rider, was on his own, never at the front, but never out of the lead group either. Floyd Landis, the Phonak leader, was isolated too, but comfortable with the pace. Denis Menchov was the best supported of the favourites, with the 2 Michaels, Rasmussen and Bogard, leading him all the way to the last climb. Rasmussen, in particular, sacrificing his chances for those of his team leader. Rogers and Klöden couldn't take the tempo and faded on the final climb. Evans hung on for longer. But in the end, there was just Landis, Menchov and Levi Leipheimer back from the dead after a disastrous first week. Menchov took the stage with a very Armstrong-like celebration, but Landis took the yellow jersey. Phonak's American has a lead of 61 seconds now over Rabobank's Russian, with Cyril Dessel in a temporary no-man's land between them. Evans is 4th, Carlos Sastre of CSC 5th, and Klöden 6th, nearly 2.5 minutes back. 1 spot behind Klöden is his teammate Michael Rogers. Leipheimer is up to 13th, although he's still the best part of 6 minutes in arrears, along with Michael Bogard. Michael Rasmussen's efforts for his team leader left him 18 minutes adrift in 35th. Well, watching all that as it unfolded was Chris Boardman. And Chris, how much clearer are you now about who can win this race?
Well, I think it was a massive day, and that had a huge effect, the sheer length of the stage. You could think that maybe Landis and Menchov were the only 2 people in it, but I don't think it is. Probably 5 still to play. Rogers and Klöden, both of them, they really didn't ride very cleverly. They did a lot of work earlier in the stage. Klöden seemed to be off the wheel all of the time, and I think both of them, they were great with about a climb to go. In fact, Rogers said so himself. So the shorter stages in the Alp, we could see them making a comeback.
What about Cadel Evans? He was there for most of the day, but not very visible.
Cadel Evans has got himself between a rock and a hard place. He's too close that he'll be allowed to skip off up the road, and he's not quite close enough for the time trial because it's not his best event. So I can see him following until the end of this race, not being allowed any slack, and he could still end up on the podium.
Of course, the strength of the key men is obviously crucial, but there's also the strength of their supporting cast. T-Mobile, as you say, have sort of got 2 leaders in Rogers and Klöden. Landis looks very isolated, but Menchov perhaps in the best position because he's got both Rasmussen and Bogard at his disposal.
Well, Landis and Menchov have both played the cleverest game so far. We haven't seen them really in this race at all until that final climb, and that's the way it should be if you're playing for the overall. Menchov's team, well, they've really surprised to see Rasmussen and Bogard doing the work that they did. He's really got some support in the mountains, and also he's got a strong team for the flat too, so he's good in that sense, but he's really got to make an attack because he can't go into the time trial behind. He needs probably a minute or more on Landis.
All right, well, let's hear what a Tour legend has got to say about Denis Menchov's chances now. Miguel Indurain was on the race yesterday in Spain.
¿Cómo valora la victoria de etapa de hoy y cómo valora sus opciones para la victoria en este Tour?
Bueno, es un corredor que vive en mi región, es un corredor que cada año va mejor, va mejorando. Y el año pasado hizo todo por venir al Tour y le salió mal. Este año viene con muchas ganas, con emoción por ganar un Tour de Francia. Entonces, una buena victoria.
Hace falta no solo talento, pero también el carácter para ganar un Tour. En su opinión, ¿lo tiene Denis?
Sí, tiene carácter, tiene ganas, lo único el calor. Etapas de calor, es de la Rusia, es un poquito, pasa un poco mal, pero él tiene ganas, es un chaval joven, tiene experiencia, puede optar a ganar el Tour.
Después de esta etapa, ¿quién sería su favorito para este Tour?
Bueno, son los 5 que están ahí, han llegado, están fuertes, pero Landis es un corredor quizá con más experiencia, va fuerte en la contrarreloj, es un poco el favorito.
Muchas gracias.
Big Mig, pulse as low as ever, but always an honour to have him drop by. Now, stage 12 takes us out of Indurain territory and into some of the hottest terrain the Tour ever tackles, the rolling, roiling hills of Languedoc-Roussillon. Well, the first Bastille Day attack came after about 10 metres when Sébastien Joly did a meatloaf off the front of the bunch. He didn't last long, and neither did Paolo Savoldelli. Now, Savoldelli had an unfortunate incident after yesterday's stage. He was riding back down the mountain to the team bus when he crashed into a spectator crossing the road and ended with a gash in his forehead that needed 15 stitches. Not good for morale, and it seems to have been the last straw. He was one of 4 riders to abandon early in the stage, including his Discovery teammate Benjamin Noval. Now, after his exertions yesterday, Michael Rasmussen still had the strength to go after some early mountain points. He led over the first summit of the day. The team of David de la Fuente, the current King of the Mountains leader, responded. They got David Miller into the break, and he deprived Rasmussen of maximum points over the next climb. The most spectacular part of the stage for once wasn't a climb, it was a cave, the prehistoric Mas d'Azil, giving the riders a temporary respite from the heat. And on that topic, Chris has been looking at the racing conditions.
Well, the first week might have been hot, but today has crowned it all. It is absolutely incredible out there, and the riders are really going to be suffering. One thing it might do is discourage them from chasing, because nobody really wants to be working hard when it's like this.
Well, when a break finally got away, Robbie McEwen was furious because in it was his rival for the green jersey, Oscar Freire. With his team presumably too shattered from yesterday to lead a chase, he was up at the front himself, trying and failing to persuade other teams to help out. But since nobody would, the 4-man group started to build a handy little lead. As well as Freire, Discovery's Jaroslav Popovic was there. In fact, he's the top-placed man in the group overall, 9 minutes off the lead in 23rd. There's also an Italian, Alessandro Ballan of Lampre, and Credit Agricole's Christophe Lemaivel, the lone chance of a home win on Bastille Day from this group. As we join commentary, their lead is approaching a critical mass, if time can approach a critical mass, and they are on the 4th climb of the day, the Côte de Pamiers.
Just the beautiful countryside here. The lanes twist and they turn. The peloton is dropping back despite their apparent hard work. It's now out, Paul, to just over 4 minutes. So I'll give it another minute, and I think alarm bells might start to ring back in the bunch.
They're going to have a hard time pulling these guys back, especially over a terrain like today, because just look at the road surface here. This is a very rough road surface. In the southern part of France here, there's a lot of chippings on the road surface because of the fact that the weather conditions are fairly hot, so they put extra stones over the top and make it very difficult. We're on a 4th category climb here, a very difficult fourth category climb. 3.9 kilometers, an average gradient of just inside of 3%, and at the summit of this climb it's 76 kilometers to go. But what's difficult about a climb like this, Phil, is the heat, because today out on the course there's not very much wind until you come down towards the finish, and this heat here in the southern part of France, it's really quite oppressive. It's almost you can almost eat the wind out there because it's just so thick.
Well, 96 degrees at the moment. Oscar Freire not bothering to contest that at all. He's more interested in the green jersey. Popovic was on the front, went over the line. Nobody contested that. Nobody interested in the King of the Mountains. They're too far behind. So Popovic heads over Lemaivel, Ballan and Freire in that order. And there's no points at the back either, so there won't be a race for the top from the peloton when they get there, because only the first 3 get points. See, Floyd's brought the big bike out now, coloured yellow. It's funny how they always have these things on board ready just in case.
Just in case. That's what the sport of professional cycling is all about. You have to wait and hope that one day or another you're going to have that. And in fact, he's changed his short colours. In years gone by, it was illegal to change the colour of your shorts to match in with the jersey. The man who pioneered that was the great Mario Cipollini. He didn't care about the fines and always had something very special to do. But now I think the International Cycling Union have they've given up the ghost on that and realised that sometimes pink and yellow doesn't really go together.
Quite right too. It's a bit of style and fashion message from the Tour de France, I think. Well, the wheat there getting almost ripe to reap as the riders go by to the department of the load. These four riders, this was the end product of a lot of attacking this morning, and at this break, when they all came back together, suddenly shot up the road, not even ones and twos, but all of them just jumped out the peloton, four of them, and that was it. They went away, whereas the others had tried all day and got really nowhere. Tight old bend. This is the very typical of the small hills that abound in this area. That's why it's so nice to bring your bike over and go cycling. Not many cars in this area, even when the Tour de France is not here, as they twist and turn, duck and dive, short, steep climbs. And the boys here having to keep their wits about them because this heat will be melting the tar on the roads today.
Certainly will. That's the problem about these roads. They're very sticky roads. And it coins the phrase that a lot of professional bike riders use, I felt like I was stuck to the road. Well, in this part of France, very often you almost literally are stuck to the road because the tar tends to melt because of the oppressive heat that we're going through at the moment, and it lifts a little bit to the surface, making the road surface actually quite sticky. And that makes it a lot harder than on a lot of the smoother road surfaces that we got in the northern part of Europe.
Well, we're just descending down here into another small town as the riders pass through. Still building nicely on the breakaway. They've still got 74 kilometers left to ride, so this will be Palmier itself for the leaders.
Well, it's not a full-on chase for the moment for Team Phonak. They're just basically riding a steady tempo. I think they will pick it up once they get down towards the end. In a situation like this, you really mustn't panic. You've got to control your effort and dose the effort over the next 2 hours of the event, and that's, I think, what they're trying to do here, Team Phonak. But they have practiced this a number of times during the year. They defended the lead of Floyd Landis in the very early season Tour of California. That was in the month of February. Then after that, they had to defend his lead in the great race in the month of March. That was Paris-Nice. And then they did the same thing in the Tour of Georgia. Since then, Floyd Landis didn't have that many performances, but certainly the team, I think, have been brought to just to the right time on form to defend a possible lead in the yellow jersey. It's a strong team that they've put together. Rabobank is a team that's been built up over many years. Alongside Floyd Landis, you've got Bert Grabsch from Germany, Robbie Hunter from South Africa, who we've seen riding for many, many miles as the pilot fish of Floyd Landis, looking after him. Nicolas Jalabert, the brother of Laurent Jalabert, who would probably love to try and win here this afternoon, but he won't be given that chance. He has to defend the yellow jersey. Miguel Angel Martin Perdiguero of Spain, Axel Merckx of Belgium, Koos Moerenhout, Dutch rider, and also Alexander Moos, the Swiss rider and former Swiss national champion, and making up the final place in that team of Phonak, Victor Hugo Peña of Colombia. It is actually, Phil, a very solid squad.
Just watching these riders here as they make the curlies down the hill. Long way to go yet.
Ciao, sono Jaroslav Popovic, guardate il tour su ITV.
Crowds are 10 deep here on Bastille Day as they wait for the Tour de France to arrive. Before the athletes do, though, they've got to negotiate 8 nasty bends in the last 1.5 kilometres as they go right around this ancient citadel. Well, those bends would normally figure in the sprint finish, of course, but after a brutal day in the mountains, the sprinters' teams have struggled to find the legs to control the peloton. Robbie McEwen certainly isn't happy because his arch rival in the green jersey competition, Oscar Freire, managed to infiltrate the breakaway of the day. However, so did Jaroslav Popovic, and he's just 9 minutes behind Landis for general classification, which means Phonak couldn't ignore the break. What does that mean? Well, it means that breakaway may come back, and and Robbie McEwen might get the mass finish that he was hoping for.
4 lonely riders down there. 4:15 is the gap, just short of Mirepoix, and that's the last sprint of the day. And Oscar Freire here will want that. He looks pretty cool and collected, wearing the rainbow jersey around the cuffs of his racing jersey, indicating he was a world champion. In fact, he's won the world title 3 times, the only man currently racing who's done that.
No, he's an incredible athlete. He's been dogged throughout his career by an awful lot of injuries. 1 kilometre to go to the sprint now. Oscar Freire in the ideal position at the back of the group. I don't think anybody in this group, Phil, really has the ability to sprint as well as Oscar Freire, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem for him to get maximum points.
One thing's for sure, he sat at the back here, he will do it. The others aren't really interested, and they, of course, aren't going to really race hard against him because they're thinking of the finish. 49 kilometres to go. Our computer just suddenly corrected itself there. It was just over a kilometre out with the race course. But anyway, it's right now as it lines up behind Ballan. Ballan can sprint. Oscar Freire going through. Is Popovic going to have a go? I don't think he's interested in 6 seconds. I would doubt it.
No, he's not really interested. I think the most important thing for Popovic today is time to try and pull back 4 or 5 minutes if he can, and possibly think about a podium position when this race gets up to Paris, because I still think there's going to be another major sort out when we get to the Alps.
I'll just keep an eye on the man in 3rd place now, because I think he's timed it so it'll be his turn at the front when they get to the line. There may not even be a sprint. He may just go past and just snatch those valuable points, setting himself up for the green jersey today if it worked out, and maybe tomorrow if it doesn't. There's the banner, and there goes Oscar Freire. So 6 points in the bag. Send that message back to the peloton. Freire, Ballan and Lemaivel across the line.
Well, it won't change his position as we speak, but he will move just that little bit closer to Robbie McEwen, and he's now currently just 1 point behind Tom Boonen.
Worth remembering as well, Tom.
Well, they've actually stretched out the advantage now as they go through this small town here over Mirepoix. And Mirepoix is a very nice walled city itself. The city we will finish in, Carcassonne, is absolutely magnificent. It is supposedly one of the most well-preserved medieval cities in the world, and in 1997 it was classified as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And I hope we get a chance to see a good aerial view of Carcassonne when we come down to the finish. And the race actually goes all the way around the walled city. But Mirepoix dates back to the 13th century, and this town has been ravaged through the years by many things, including floods, plagues. It's been pillaged and burned by invading armies, and but still a lot of it has been preserved. And down in the middle of town there's a very nice covered marketplace. None of that interesting at all for the riders in the race. All they're thinking about is trying to catch the 4 men who are at the front of the race, because as far as they're concerned, this is a dangerous day out on the open road. The 4 leaders, the most dangerous man in that group, Jaroslav Popovic. There's confirmation of the sprint. Freire ahead of Ballan and Lemaivel. The second's not really important for any of these riders, but for them what is more important is just staying ahead of the main field. Organisation now, you can see all the teams starting to get together. AG2R over to the right-hand side. They're still in 2nd place overall with Cyril Dessel. I'm sure Cyril Dessel will disappear a little bit once we get up into the Alps, but their other man, Christophe Moreau, not too happy with his performance yesterday. Cracked a little bit towards the end, but still inside the top 10 at 9th.
Well, he did crack, but then a lot of riders, it was like a war of attrition at times on the mountains. It wasn't so much there was an attack, it was just that the riders kept a high tempo, and those that couldn't fell off the pace, and it was as simple as that until the last climb up to the finishing line. Levi Leipheimer desperately wanted that win yesterday and tried hard, but Menchov was just that better sprinter.
Well, I suppose it's only fair that they got the win for Team Rabobank, because they set it up perfectly. Started off at the bottom of the valley with a brilliant ride by Michael Rasmussen, dragging them along the valley roads. Then Michael Bogert took over, riding like I've never seen him ride in the mountains before. Really put a lot of responsibility onto the shoulders of Menchov to come up with the win.
I must say Bogart's having a great tour right now, and so too is his team at Rabobank. I haven't seen that far behind now, because there's the kilometre sign for these riders, all being paced towards the line by Robbie Hunter at the moment. An idea of just how quick they're passing by the camera lens there, static shot.
what is actually quite amazing, if you ever go to physically see a race like the Tour de France and stand at the side of the road there, is the breeze that the main field actually generates when they go by. It's an incredible wind, and it's that wind that riders try and take advantage of. If you ride in the middle of the pack, right in the center of the arrowhead, you actually get sucked along a little bit, and you can be, as we've seen from a number of riders' heartbeats, you can actually have a reasonably easy ride. But not everybody's capable of doing that. A lot of riders are scared to get in there because there's a lot of bumping and shoving of elbows and shoulders.
46k to go, and 4:11, nudging away to their biggest advantage now. So they're sticking to the guns here. Popovic has pulled back nearly half of his deficit overnight. He was 9 minutes off the pace. Now he's got back 4 minutes 11. They're not going to let this run much longer.
Ciao, mi chiamo Alessandro Ballan, guardate il tour su ITV.
Well, perhaps it's because all your light bulbs have gone in every room at exactly the same time, but you seem to be obsessed with wattage out there. Plenty of people have been writing in emails like this. Richard Morrison of Cambridge has written, "You mentioned on the commentary that Igor Martinez was generating upwards of 800 watts, which is way beyond my hardest achievements won in the gym. Could you tell us what the average rider wattage is during a stage or a time trial?" Well, Chris, I guess that entirely depends what sort of stage it is, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so. All the riders on in this peloton will be able to reach peak powers of somewhere around 1,000 watts. Some of them 1,800 watts, like Tom Boonen, of course, but only for a few seconds.
Mano a mano, shoulder to shoulder, but Boonen, much the bigger, bulkier man, seemed to have the power this time.
Sustainable powers are another thing. I mean, going up these climbs, you'll probably see an average of around about 400, 420 watts for the big riders. So that's about as much as they can sustain. And when really attacking, about 500.
What was the best you ever did?
My absolute peak power, I was rubbish, was just under 1,000 watts. I was beaten by a lot of the women on the GB sprint squad.
Yeah, but you're man enough to admit it, and that's good. How many Mars bars per hour does that equate to, Richard writes?
Oh my God, you must be talking in the region of 5 Mars bars an hour.
Excellent. Now, a lot of this information is relayed these days over the internet, isn't it? And you've managed to, you love your laptop, I know you love your laptop, and you managed to fish it off the internet, haven't you?
We've found all sorts of interesting stuff, because we know that the riders now have, they now have helmet communication, so they've got instant voice communication with the team cars. We know the team cars have got live television footage, and as well as that, they've got this. So selected riders in the peloton have actually got telemetry systems that transfer how much power they're producing back into the to the team manager. So the team manager's got pretty much anything they could possibly want to orchestrate their team's progress.
Well, as they're commentating, Phil and Paul obviously have access to all that information, and also somewhere just behind the finishing line there's a team of analysts locked in the back of a transit van measuring the time each rider takes pulling at the front of a breakaway and breaking that down into a percentage. They also have software which analyzes the moving image and calculates the number of pedal turns each minute, and that gives you the cadence. That information they provide up to the TV directors, and they choose whether or not to go with it. But you really have to like your stats to be into that. Anyway, do keep your emails coming. You can contact us using the address that appears on the screen now. In the meantime, back to the race.
20 kilometres to go to the line, and of these 4 riders that broke away have been away for an awful long way now, but they were, despite the danger man of Jaroslav Popovic in blue, 9 minutes behind overnight, has now gained back 4 minutes 40 over Floyd Landis. Oscar Freire will work with him because he wants to win the stage and go very close in to challenging Robbie McEwen for his green jersey. Alessandro Ballan, he's a very good sprinter as well, and that's evidenced by his 3rd place finish this year in Paris-Roubaix. And Christophe Lemaivel, well, he's motivated by the fact it's Bastille Day. This is the back of the peloton, but I can tell you now that behind the peloton, quite a few riders have been split off in those crosswinds, including, funnily enough, the former Giro d'Italia winner on a couple of occasions. That's Gilberto Simoni. Everybody's crowding up behind the boys in lime green, but nobody is willing to help them chase, and it looks like they're all going to pay for it today.
Yep, it looks as if they are. They're actually having a hard time eating into this advantage, and they've picked up that very fast tailwind on the run-in down towards the finish. Oscar Freire, every time it slows down, Phil, you see him going to the front. He realizes he's got a very good chance here of getting himself win number 3. Ron
Gap, the board there, said 4:31, I think, but by the time he gets up there, I think our Our timings which come at us on screen are a little bit more reliable because they're being taken from the GPS system. Faces of the boys who are riding at a steady 50 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I just quickly checked my rule book there. In fact, it is graded as an average mountain stage this afternoon, which I think is a bit steep because it's not really that hard at the start. Anyway, the race organisers have put it in as an average mountain stage, which means that there are actually 25 points available for the first rider to cross the line. So it's really fairly important. As we get closer to the finish, these guys have now got to start thinking of how they can outwit the man in the orange jersey there and the blue shorts, because Oscar Freire is certainly the fastest. Jaroslav Popovic making a good move up the overall classification. Alejandro Balán at the back there, wondering whether or not he can outwit the man from Spain. Four different nations represented. The Frenchman Christophe Lemaivel would certainly very much like to come up with a win here this afternoon. If they want to win, I think they're going to have to launch an attack on the run-in down towards the finish.
15 kilometers to go. It's curtains now, but when is Lemaivel going to make his attack? Because he's got no chance if he runs into the finish with these three other riders.
Well, he's got to make a move somewhere on the run-in towards the end, but you can be sure that that's what Alejandro Balán is thinking, and of course Jaroslav Popovic, because although Popovic is going to move up in the overall classification, I think probably also on the back of his mind is trying to get a stage win too.
I think that might even be his first priority, because yes, he'd be a top 10 rider again in the Tour, but he would be more interested now in a stage because he doesn't want to be just a top 10 rider. He wanted to be a rider racing for first place. He lost that chance, I think, yesterday. All depends if he continues to climb better than he did in the Pyrenees when we get to the Alps, because he can ride a good time trial as well.
And made a quick check at the rule book. In fact, the organisation have put 4 mountains of what they call medium mountain stages down, and the stage today, Luchon to Carcassonne, comes into that category. Montélimar to Gap the day after tomorrow comes into that category, and then the final mountain stage from Morzine to Mâcon is a medium mountain stage where there are less points available for the king of the mountain, for the king of the sprints or the green jersey points classification. So that really should make Robbie McEwen feel a little bit more comfortable with his lead, because that's 6 points has been taken out on the road by Oscar Freire, and he's got the possibility of another 25. And Robbie McEwen will probably be looking at taking 16 points if he leads the race home in 5th place. And when you go to the high mountains, there are only 20 points available, and there's only 15 points available in the individual time trial. So their competition very much aimed at the riders who are specialists in the sprint. It's all stacked up for them on the very, very flat stages where normally 35 points are available. So these riders, although I thought they would lose a fair amount of their time towards the finish, they're still holding on to 4 minutes 20.
Looking at the way these riders are working together, nobody is sort of hanging on at the back, Paul. They're all doing their regular little bit of pacemaking, taking a breathe at the back, getting on with the job in hand. They know now they're not going to be caught.
Well, now what they've got to think about is not consider the time advantage, because I'm sure they will lose a fair amount of time down towards the end. We're projecting a win time of around about 1 minute and 23. But if the main field doesn't keep the pressure on, they could conserve 2 or 3 minutes of this advantage. After all, let's not forget these projections are all coming by computer, and it all depends on how the legs are of the riders in Team Phonak.
I've made a note of that one because I want to see just how this computer does that. I know we are slightly nibbling away at seconds off the lead, but it's a very brave man to predict a victory by 1 minute 23. I'll check that out when they reach the line later.
Hi, I'm Michael Rogers, and you can watch more of the tour just after the break.
If it's one of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites, there's half a chance it's going to be worth taking a look at. Carcassonne has always been a deeply impressive place, even when it was just a lump of rock overlooking the plains of the Languedoc. Just the spot, in fact, to build a fort to last for a millennium or two. There are three hugely significant dates in the history of Carcassonne. The 3rd century AD, when some far-sighted Roman first had the idea of sticking up some walls to defend the castle they'd built on this rock. Then 1209, when the Crusaders turned up and trashed the place en route to bigger and badder adventures further east. And then, of course, 2001, when Ryanair first started flying here. What do you think of Carcassonne, then?
Carcassonne's lovely. Fantastic castle. Coming from Scotland, we have great castles anyway, so...
Yeah. So, just the castle or a bit of cycling as well today?
Just the castle, I think. I think the cycling will be far too busy for us.
We're just killing time, really.
What do you know? It's not a bad way to kill time, is it, before the cycling?
It's not bad, it's not bad.
Excellent. Yes, we've arrived. It's not so much pimp my medieval walled city, since nobody wants to sell their houses in the old town, but we do like a spot of digital camera tourism here. And it's not just us. The French and the Germans love Carcassonne too, and why not? It's stunning. Talk to the locals and they'll tell you it's made a huge difference to the local economy, though I'm still a little unclear what claim they make to King Arthur and the Round Table. The Tour de France first came here in 1947. It was the first year of Tour director Jacques Godet's reign, and throughout the intervening years it's popped in at regular intervals to check on the ramparts. A nice place to stop off for a bowl of cassoulet in between the horrors of the Alps and the Pyrenees, although for the riders it's just hot and flat and fast. Well, perhaps wisely, the tour organisers have routed the race and the caravan away from the ancient walled city. After a few hundred years of holding out against intruders, the last thing they need here in Carcassonne is a horde of camembert-chucking publicity junkies. It's definitely one of those stops, though, on the Tour de France where you say to yourself, I'll bring the family back here one day. I wonder if the riders ever look up.
8.9 kilometres to go, and it's still 4.5 minutes. I think the computer might have made a little bit of a mistake here this afternoon, because they don't look like a peloton who are actually chasing these four riders in earnest. They're basically just trying to survive.
Just heard the race radio shout attack to Popovic. Our cameras cut to it, and there it goes. We had to get it. Boy, he's really gone too. A little bit slow to react to Christophe Lemavelle. I don't think anybody was expecting an attack this far out.
Well, it's a brave move by this man. They're so far from the finish. This is a class act. Don't ever forget Jaroslav Popovic. Lemavelle in difficulty here, trying to get himself back into contention here. He was trying to get onto the back of those two riders for France if he can. But look at the performance here of Alessandro Ballan. He's dragging up Oscar Freire there. Oscar Freire, he is just quite happy to sit there on the wheel. Popovic was certainly going for this one.
They have got rid of Christophe Lemavelle. He had nothing and no answer to that. Popovic now says, well, that was my 100% effort, and back come these two at the behind.
And watch out here, because as they slow down, you may well see Christophe Lemavelle just be able to make the junction once more. Oh, Freire's going over the top.
Freire's gone. It's the old 1-2 now. Freire's trying, and they don't want Lemavelle to get back into this.
Well, Oscar Freire took one straight out of the tactical handbook there. Look at Ballan, sees the motorbike over to the right-hand side and says, thanks very much, I'll have a bit of that. Just a fraction of a slipstream helps him to close the gap down between himself and the Spaniard. Looks over his shoulder there. Now here's another move. Popovic now coming over the top. He's going to try and go once again, but this time Ballan is right on his wheel. Or is he? No, he's not. Ballan has seen the danger. He's the man now trying to get across to Popovic. The Rabobank rider, Oscar Freire, this is the man who is in 4th place. Look at the white on his jersey there. That's the salt that's come from profusely sweating in this incredibly high temperature here this afternoon. And as this time it's Popovic decides to go straight over the top. This is the only way to win. They know they've got to get to the finish alone, because not any one of these three riders is actually confident of outsprinting Oscar Freire.
Well, Johan Bruneel will be advising Popovic from the car here, and he's clearly said, hit them again because you might get away. Popovic is looking very strong here. Now, that's two big attacks that we've seen from Jaroslav Popovic. It's been counted. Here comes Christophe Lemavelle as he makes the roundabout, not too close to our motorbike. Here we go.
Trying again.
4 kilometers to go. The third attack we know of by Jaroslav Popovic, and it's always Alessandro Ballan who tries to reduce the deficit. He's looking a little bit sluggish this time.
He certainly is looking a little bit sluggish. He's left himself 5 or 10 bicycle lengths advantage. You need to close down gaps like this very quickly, but you know, Phil, Ballan is a very strong rider. We saw him in the early part of the year. I think he was 5th in the Tour of Flanders. He was third in Paris-Roubaix. He is a strong rider in the one-day races.
Look, here comes a Christophe Lemaivel. He can see them just up the road. He can't get onto them.
This is off. Popovic is going again.
And nobody was looking this time, and Balin says, no, I've been doing it all the time. But again, Frere's gambled and wouldn't help him. And I don't think Balin's got it anymore. I think he's cracked.
Well, he's just looking at Borislav Popovic there. 3 kilometers to go. That's about 4 minutes of effort. When you've been in the lead for so long, you've got to find something special. But I think he's not very happy about finding Oscar Freire on his wheel.
He is so fed up of it now. He's had to close every attack. This is Popovic's 4th attack. Freire has not come off his wheel and may well have cost him the race.
Well, this morning, L'Equipe was very scathing in its remarks about Team Discovery, saying, well, finally we've seen this team crumble, but today they're absolutely bouncing back. They've decided now that if they're not going to win the Tour de France this year with Hincapie, Popovic, Martinez, they're going to go out and try and win stages. Let's not forget, last year Popovic was the best young rider in the Tour de France. Freire has been caught out here this afternoon. This man is now definitely going to get the win. But I'm just casting my mind back to Johan Brunel this morning in the newspapers, Phil. He basically put everybody's guard down by saying, well, it's all over for us now.
Well, this is the part of the square now. The finish is on his left shoulder, but we've still quite a way to go around the square here. Very tricky corners. Gets a bit narrow. He's not going to worry about this. He's free to fly now. This will be a stage win indeed for Team Discovery. Well, you can't keep a good team down, and the tactical brilliance of Brunel is showing us again how to ride a Tour de France.
Taking all the risks going around these final few corners. Jaroslav Popovic now knows he's got the victory because these two riders have been caught out. Alessandro Balin was the man who was looking for the victory for Italy here this afternoon, but the victory is going to go to the Ukraine and to Jaroslav Popovic and to the United States with Team Discovery. We expected him to be the man who would lead Team Discovery to a podium position this year in the Tour. Well, that all fell away on the slopes of the Pyrenees, but like a proud champion, a true champion, he's fighting himself back into the Tour de France this afternoon with a very fine stage victory.
He's lining up for the finish very shortly. He needn't worry about those two behind now. He earned the victory by simply hitting them as hard as he could. Not once, twice, 3, but 4 times, and the 4th time they threw out the white flag. And now Jaroslav Popovic will also probably climb up to around 11th or 12th in the Tour de France, but much more important to him now is the victory here today.
The victory here is something which is very sweet indeed for a bike rider. When you come into the finishing straight, you know you're going to win, especially when you're alone like this and you throw your hands up in the air in victory. That is a very special moment.
Jaroslav Popovic, those legs are on fire right now. He's just flicked that gear up a notch. Oh, is lap banner ever going to come to me, he says. Keeps looking under his arms there to see if there's anybody coming after him. There isn't. He's done it. Zips up his jersey. The strong man, and the Ukrainians are having a great race here with Sergei Honchov as well. Jaroslav Popovic gets the stage win for Team Discovery, and here comes the battle for what is left. And look at this, Balin is going to give Freire a run for his money, and coming right up and gritting his teeth is Lemaivel.
Well, Lemaivel is going to take 4th place there. You can see Alejandro Balin looks over his shoulder. And in fact, Oscar Freire, having sat on him for a number of attacks, has decided he isn't going to challenge him for the win. But look at the face on Balin, that tells it all.
Balin second. Freire, in fact, was not throwing a dummy at Balin. He'd had enough for the day back down the road. Christophe Lemaivel, because it was Bastille Day, never stopped trying to catch up, and he came desperately close. But I really think 4th was always going to be for him. There's Jaroslav Popovic. Johan Brunel this morning saying all we've got left to race for is stage wins. Didn't take long in grabbing one, did he? And there'll be celebrations of a type in the team bus tonight.
It's a huge long line here. Team Phonak are stretching this out. They're not trying to sprint here this afternoon. They're trying to make it safe over the last 3 or 4 kilometers, because if you stretch the main field out into a big long line, then what that does for you, Phil, is makes it just that little bit safer. There is Robbie McEwen. I was waiting to see when he would pop up. He's right on the wheel of Tom Boonen, and I wonder if Tom Boonen is going to take a little bit of pride in trying to sprint here this afternoon.
Still another corner to come yet. The lead out for Eric Zabel, the second man in blue. Thor Hushovd is trying to get a lead out. He's third man in green off to the right. Also mixing it in the sprint there is Tom Bonan in the white jersey. He's got his lead out man. He's going to come. And Robbie McEwen has got Tom Bonan's back wheel. Bernardi's off to the left of the picture. This is the swing which will bring them up into the finishing straight now. They take it wide. Bonan's got the position. Second round the corner. Bernardi's on his right shoulder. Bernardi will break left, but they're waiting for somebody to go. The lead out man, Hushoft, is fully stretched and going out of it. So Bonan and McEwen, here comes the pocket bomber. He's going to just smoothly move forward. Nobody can beat him except Tom Bonan. No, yes, Tom Bonan going.
Well, that was a little bit of pride for the world champion there. If it had been for first place, it might have been a slightly different sprint, but Bonan, I think, trying to get his morale back. He's been beaten a number of times by Robbie McEwen, but that one, Phil, that 5th place, that was just for pride.
And if Robbie McEwen was going to lose a sprint to Tom Bonan in this tour, I suppose that's the one he'd have picked. Bonan 5th ahead of McEwen, and the pair of them behind the 4 members of the escape group, led in by Jaroslav Popovic. The men in the main bunch weren't overly worried by the time gaps today. They lost around 4.5 minutes, although a couple of splits in the field saw Bradley Wiggins in a group at 4:44 and David Miller at 5:12. Miller, after his foray off the front early in the stage, upbeat when he spoke to Ned Boulting.
Starting to feel like a bike racer again today, you know, it's like starting to fire up, so, oh no, you start to see more of me now.
Better and better, fitter and fitter each day?
I'll be stomping for the Vuelta, that's for sure.
Well, between Sergei Honchar and this man, I suspect Ukrainian viewing figures for the tour are through the roof. Best young rider last year, and currently the best man on the Discovery team. He spoke to Matt Rendell.
Francamente non sei stato il favorito in quel gruppo, un gruppo con Freire e con Balan.
Sì, è stato molto difficile, è stato un gruppo che si può dire dovevo fare terzo posto, sicuramente. Come andava Balan molto forte, come Freire velocista, per questo dovevo attaccare, solo attaccare e basta.
Una vittoria con le gambe e anche con la testa, Jaroslav.
Sì, penso che bisogna 50 per 50. Sicuramente dovevo pensare a come si può fare e dopo, se non avevo gamba, non potevo fare niente. Per questo ho attaccato.
Slave, dici francamente, il morale dentro la squadra Discovery com'è?
Adesso ieri è stata non tanto bene perché siamo andati male, si può dire. Adesso morale è cambiata, per noi è cominciato un altro tour, altri obiettivi e adesso spero con questa vittoria dare ancora più morale alla squadra.
E adesso avete un leader?
No, si può dire per cosa, per tappe può essere, per classifica generale vediamo salite.
Slava, in bocca al lupo.
Well, no change in the top 6 as a result of today's stage. It's still Floyd Landis by 8 seconds from Cyril Dessel. Then Denis Menchov, his first serious challenger, at 61 seconds, followed by Cadel Evans, Carlos Sastre and Andreas Klöden. Popovic, though, has done himself a power of good with today's ride. He's now 10th, 4 minutes 15 off the lead. And in honour of Bastille Day, there's the Lanterne Rouge, last man in the race, Sébastien Joly, who launched the earliest attack of the entire tour at the 0 kilometre mark this morning. That attack was nothing for Floyd Landis to worry about on his first day in the yellow jersey, and neither in the end was the one that succeeded, but he knows it's now his responsibility to control the race.
It was a difficult day to control. Was for me harder than yesterday. I like the mountains better, but okay, I enjoyed it anyway.
Floyd's soundbite, incidentally, the exact length of his lead in the standings over Dessel. Now, Robbie McEwen's lead in the green jersey standings was affected by today's result. Oscar Freire leapfrogging Tom Bonan into second place. And Robbie was annoyed that, having helped the yellow jersey chase down some early attacks in the stage, no one was willing to help him when his rival Freire finally got into the break that mattered.
At that moment, everyone decided that, you know, the guy who's third in the green jersey competition is going down the road. He's 10 seconds in front. They decided it's time for a piss, but not me. I had to try and chase him. I couldn't catch him, and then I sat up. But whatever criticism there was about the way I rode at that moment, I really couldn't give a rat's, because I'm defending green, the others aren't, and they've got to understand the tactics. I was disappointed to see Freire going down the road, and for me, it was a bad moment to choose to help out and close the gap to Landis, because as I got there, Freire took off, and there was nobody else to try and close it down, and I had to just watch it go down the road.
You're a passionate man. Did it really anger you?
Gave me the shits, to be honest. That's the tour.
Well, more bodily functions, no doubt, in the Robbie McEwen Daily Soundbite tomorrow. More soundbites from everyone on the podcast at itv.com/tour. And incidentally, only one more day of this week's competition. To enter, just answer this question. Where will the Tour de France start next year? Is it A, Paris, B, Rome, or C, London? Now, you can either call us with the answer on 09012 93 33 93, or text the word Tour and either A, B or C to 63337. First prize is a weekend for two in Paris with tickets for the final stage of the Tour. Copies of Matt Rendell's biography of Marco Pantani go to 5 runners-up. Entries cost £1, by the way, and the lines are open until midnight tomorrow. Now, it's Saturday tomorrow, so we're off to ITV3 for the weekend and live coverage of Stage 13. It's the longest of the entire Tour, 230 kilometres from Béziers to Montélimar, through the kind of rolling country that's tailor-made for another successful breakaway. Let's hope that the rain does what it did today and holds off until just after the finish. Either way, we will see you live tomorrow from 4 o'clock onwards.